So let's talk a little bit about the Amazon warehouse. Now, most of you have seen the warehouse. If you drive down the 101 and you get to Del Norte, you can't miss it. Hundreds of thousands of square feet of storage space and distribution and facilities there. And if you look very closely at the top of that building, you'll notice that there's a row of windows up there that are office space that they have on top of the warehouse space. And that's very important. I'll come back to the reason why just a little bit later, but they have the office space combined there. But who knew that when Amazon came here, it was going to have such a profound impact on the sales tax distribution within the county? No one really realized the actual impact that it was going to have. In fact, every sale that goes through the Amazon warehouse actually causes another city in the county to lose sales tax revenue. So Oxnard, because they have the Amazon warehouse, they are getting a disproportionate amount of sales tax revenue for all of the online sales that they do through Amazon. And that's what we want to talk about today. So how did we get there? How did this all start? Well, as I look around the room, I can see that all of you remember the early days of the internet. And if you think back to those very early days, if you bought something on Amazon or any online retailer, you did not have to pay sales tax. And that was one of the advantages of buying online. Now, that was a long time ago. But states soon realized that, hey, we're losing a lot of sales tax revenue. We got to do something about that. And one state in particular, South Dakota, said, we're going to take this to court. So South Dakota picked on one of those online retailers, a company called Wayfair. And those of you may know Wayfair, they sell home goods online. They took Wayfair to court, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court looked at the case and they said, yep, you're right, states are losing this revenue. So from here on out, all online retailers have to collect sales tax and they have to pay it to the state. And then it was up to the states to figure out how that happened. So there was this mad gold rush of everybody trying to figure out what's going to be the protocol for us to collect and distribute the sales tax. And that's where it got real interesting. So the sales tax portion of it is, and we'll go through that in just a minute, they went through and decided, boy, I'm drawing a blank here. They decided how they wanted to distribute those sales taxes. So if you take a look at our particular county here, this is a sales tax distribution for the city of Ventura. And we're just going to use this as our example today because we're all here in Ventura. And this is how your sales tax breaks down. Now, in the county, the sales tax is 7.25%. That's for all the cities that are out there. And then it can go up from there, as it does for Ventura's. Ventura's sales tax is 7.75% because they've added another 0.5% on top of that. But this is the way that the sales tax breaks out for you. So if you take a look at the big blue portion of the pie over there, that's about 4% of the 7.75% sales tax. And that 4% goes to the state's general fund. It has absolutely no local ramifications whatsoever. We have no control over that at all. Then if you take a look at the county's portion of it, up here at the top, you've got a little bit of sliver, the county transportation fund, that's about 0.25%. Down below, you've got the county public safety, that's about 0.5%. And then you've got the big yellow portion there, that's the county realignment portion of it. Now, county realignment, as I understand it, is things like environment and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and those kinds of things that are projects of the supervisors. Here in Ventura, we actually have another 0.5%, Measure O. Those of you that live here remember we voted for that about 8 years ago. And that 0.5% belongs to the city, and there's nothing that they can do, that the state or anybody else can do to take that money away from the city. But the portion of the sales tax that's in question right now is this orange section right down here. That's called the Bradley-Burns portion of the sales tax, and that's 1% of the 7.75% sales tax that's there. And that portion of the sales tax goes to the city in which the sale is made. So part of the state coming up with a plan, they went to the legislature and they created something called Assembly Bill 147, or AB 147 for short. And it was relatively simple. They said this, that if you buy something in a city online, then the sales tax has to be collected for the city that you bought it in, and the sales tax will be distributed accordingly. So if I'm here in Ventura, and let's say I buy something from Amazon or any other retailer online, they said, you're in Ventura, you're going to pay the 7.75% sales tax, and then we're going to distribute it from there, which sounded really, really good and sounded relatively simple. However, there was a little bit of an Easter egg that they hid in AB 147. And that little Easter egg was down at the bottom that says, if a county has a headquarters office or a regional headquarters office, then instead of this 1% Bradley Burns portion going to the city where the sale was made, it now goes to the city where the headquarters is located. So that brings us back to those windows that I was talking about on the top of the Amazon building. See, back in the early days of Amazon in California, they did not own their distribution. They allowed third parties to do that for them. But concurrently with the passing of the Wayfair lawsuit, Amazon made the decision, a business decision, that they wanted to own their own distribution. So they went on a rampage, opening up warehouses all throughout the country and throughout California as well. Some of those warehouses that they opened up as regional headquarters offices. So when they came to Oxnard, they said, hey, you've got some land, we've got an idea, why don't we set up a warehouse, distribution facility, and a regional office here in Oxnard? And Oxnard was all on board with that. They said, fine. Well, because of the AB 147, now if you buy something from Amazon and it goes through that warehouse, instead of the 1% of the sales tax that would normally go to Ventura or the city that you live in, it now goes to Oxnard. So let's try to make this a little bit more concrete and give you an example. Let's say that you buy a television from Amazon, $500 television, and the sales tax is 7.75%. If you do the math real quickly, that turns out to be $38.75 in tax. Charlie, did I get that right? Okay, good. He's got his calculator out, checking me on the numbers. No pressure. So anyway, it's $38.75 in tax. Now, if you bought it through Amazon, of course, it ships through Amazon's warehouse in Oxnard. So 1% or $5 of that $100 actually goes not to the city of Ventura for its general fund, but it goes to the city of Oxnard instead. Now, how big of a problem is this? Well, Joe sort of tipped the hat there. He said it's about $800,000. Actually, I've talked to the CFO of the city. He's actually the director of finance and technology. And he told me that the number is somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million a year that the city is losing in sales tax revenue. And Joe sort of split the middle. He said it was $800,000, $200,000 a quarter. That's a good number. And so I asked the chief financial officer, is that significant and is that meaningful? He said, well, yes, it is meaningful. We have to pay attention to it. But at the time, he said, I don't know how significant that's going to be. So I just want to take a minute, if I can, to put that in perspective. So $800,000 to $1 million a year. What could you do with that money if you had gotten it? Well, it takes about $1 million a mile to pave a road. So that's 1 mile of road in Ventura that won't get paved each and every year because the sales tax is going to Oxnard. Or if you look at public safety, starting salaries for officers is about $100,000. So that's between 7 and 10 police officers or firefighters that you can't hire because you don't have that revenue from the sales tax of Amazon sales. Or how many trees is that you can't cut, or how many sidewalks that you can't fix. that's the impact that it has on you. So it is very real consequences of this. Now, just for fun, I like to do a little compare and contrast. So I thought it would be fun to take a look at the 3 cities in the county with the highest sales tax. And for those of you in the back of the room, I apologize for this being an eye chart. It's not meant to be. I just want to make a simple thing here. What's that, Bruce?
That's a good one, eye chart.
Yeah. So I just want to make this simple point. The 3 cities with the highest sales tax in the county are, drum roll please, Oxnard at 9.25%. So they take the basic 7.25 and they tack on, with all the other taxes, another 2% on top of that. In second place, Santa Paula at 8.25%. And in third place is Ventura at 7.75%. And that 7.75, as we talked about earlier, is actually Measure O. But the point I want to make is this, that regardless of how high the sales tax is, the Bradley-Burns portion, the orange portion that you see there, is always 1%. It doesn't vary no matter how much the sales tax goes up or goes down, it's 1% that the cities are losing, okay? That's the point that I wanted to make here. Now, because I like to see connections, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to take a look at, of these cities that are getting all this sales tax revenue, how do they stack up financially? I had to go to a separate source for this data. I went to the California state auditor. Every year, the state auditor goes around for the 470 cities in the county, and they analyze their financial performance. And then they come out and they rank them from best to worst. So I went through and I said, all right, let's take a look at the 10 cities in the county and let's see how this shapes up. So this slide, again, I apologize for it being an eye test, but I'm trying to make the point very clear here. These are the 10 cities in the county from not worst to best, but ranked on improvement. Now, I didn't want to look at just 1 year's worth of data, because that's interesting, but it doesn't tell me anything. I want to look at a trend instead. So I took a 5-year period, and I compared how things were for that city in 2016 versus 2020. And let's start with Oxnard if we can. Highest sales tax in the county at 9.25. If you take a look, Oxnard, according to the state auditor's report back in 2016, was the 101st worst performing city financially. 5 years later, that number had gone down to number 8. It is now the 8th worst performing city in the county, or a negative change of dropping 93 places.
By the state.
What's that? By the state. The state has said, Oxnard, you are 93 places worse on the pecking order than you were 5 years ago. Now, the other one was Santa Paula. Santa Paula back in 2016 started out at a very lowly 22, but to their credit, over the 5-year period, they went from 22 to 77, according to the state auditor's report. So credit where credit is due. They moved up 55 points, and they are in better financial shape now than they were 5 years ago. Good for them. Third was Ventura. Ventura started at 104 5 years ago, and today it is up to 152. That's a jump of 48 places. So again, credit where credit is due. Ventura has done a good job of getting its arms around its fiscal house, trying to get it in order. Now, what I find interesting about all of this, by the way, is comparing two cities, two very like cities, Ventura and Oxnard. Now, they're both alike because they're old cities. They've got aging infrastructure. They both have their own police forces, and they both have their own fire departments. And if you take a look over the 5-year period, you see a very big divergence of the way that they're going. Ventura went from 104 to 152. It went up 48 spots. Oxnard went from 101, which is essentially the same starting place as it was with Ventura, but it went down to number 8. So I think that that's a very dramatic, very interesting comparison. Now, each year when the state auditor's data comes out, we do write a report about this. And if you're interested in our full report about it, you can find it on our website, vcta.org, and you can download it. It's the March report. And it's where we do a comparison, not only of these cities, but we talk about the county in its entirety. And if I may, I want to make one other interesting observation about this. Ventura, to its credit, went from 104 to 152. Yay, team. The two people most responsible for that improvement are the city manager and the chief financial officer, which Ventura calls the director of finance and budget. So how did Ventura reward those two people for their stellar performance? Both are gone, both were fired, and now we have new people. We've got a new CFO, and Bill, he was introduced to you earlier. He's stepping in, and he's got some big shoes to fill. Okay? So that just gives you an idea, again, of where we are and how this is stacking up. Now, what are cities doing about this? Joe mentioned earlier, it might have been in private conversation, but he mentioned the League of California Cities. League of California Cities represents all of the cities, and it goes out to all 470 cities in the county, and it says to them, hey, we think that this Amazon deal is a raw deal. Will you join us in our petition to Sacramento? So what they've been doing is the League of Cities has gone around looking for recruits, and they're up currently lobbying Sacramento to get this changed. They want it to be something that's a little bit more fair and equitable in the distribution of the Bradley Burns 1%. Okay? Now, if you were to ask, they asked all the cities here in the county of Ventura, and of the 10 cities, only one, Moore Park, signed up to do this. So that tells you something. But if you were to ask Oxnard why they need the 1%, they actually have some valid points, some things that need to be weighed in this public policy debate. You know, they say, look, we've got all those 18-wheelers moving in and out. We've got all those gray delivery vans moving in and out. There's wear and tear on our roads. There's added traffic. And there's the air quality issue that you have to fight with as well. So for those reasons, we think we need the 1%. Those are valid concerns. You can't argue those, that they make some sense. But do they need the full 1%? That's what the League of Cities is California Cities is trying to do. They're trying to get out there to change that into something that maybe isn't as high as 1%, 0.5%, 0.25%, whatever it might be. So that's what's currently going on right now. What can you do as a piece of this? Well, a couple of things. First of all, you need to be aware. Because prior to today, if I went out into the city and asked 100 people if they knew about how the sales tax from the Amazon warehouse was affecting the city, 99 out of 100, maybe even 100 out of 100 wouldn't know anything about it. So being aware is the first part, no doubt. Also, be aware that your city, if it's not Oxnard, is losing sales tax revenue. That has ramifications. That means really one of two things. Either reduced services, or they're going to have to increase taxes to make up for it. So you really only have two possibilities there. So be aware, be on the lookout for that kind of thing. The second option is you can stop buying from Amazon. That's not going to be very likely. All of us got addicted to Amazon, particularly during the pandemic. It's so easy to do. Some days you get next day delivery. Other times you can even get it the same day. Chances are people are not going to change their habits. So that's probably a very unrealistic thing to expect. In fact, the opposite will probably be true. You'll probably see people buying more on Amazon than they did in the past. The third choice is a little bit more practical. Go to your city council and ask them to join in with the League of California Cities in their lobbying of Sacramento to change AB 147 to something that's a little bit different than what it is today. And let the professionals do the lobbying, get up there, make the pitch, so that we can have a little bit different distribution of the sales tax for online sales through Amazon. And then there's a fourth choice. You can go to your supervisor and you can ask your supervisor, hey, you guys are holding the purse strings for the entire county. We know that Amazon revenue is giving Oxnard a big boost when it comes to the money that they're collecting. You distribute money to Oxnard. why don't you just hold back a little bit on the money that you're distributing and distribute that amongst the other cities that don't have the warehouse to sort of level the playing field on a local level.